we ready? I didn't even see the number countdown. Are we ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I guess we're recording. Hi, everybody. Happy Wednesday.
Okay, how's your back doing, Tara?
Well, I'm going to say this once and then like not say it again. It is not any better. In fact, I think it's actually worse, but I'm trying not to speak that into the universe. So I'm trying to focus on saying, I feel great and I feel optimally healthy. But it's really hard to do when you can't even sleep comfortably. Like, I can't lay on my back, my side, my stomach, nothing. Like, the only thing that feels tolerable is standing. So, am I supposed to like strap myself to the door and like
Stand
sleep
all night.
standing up?
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a long time to be in that kind of pain.
But I
I've
think it's
only had,
muscle.
huh?
I think it's muscular.
Yeah, it probably is.
What do
It's
they do for
probably
that? Nothing.
you probably need muscle relaxers,
Yeah.
you know. I think that could probably help, but I don't know. I mean, I had that happen one time. And I remember thinking, like, how do people live like this that have
Right.
chronic pain all the time? Like, I could see how people would just be hooked on pain medications because it's all you can think about. I mean, how do you not focus on it when it's throbbing or like hurting that bad?
Yeah, that was my thing. I was thinking about last night. I'm like, some people just have this pain all the time. And I'm close to tears because I can't get comfortable. And also because I develop anxiety when I can't exercise. Like, working out is a huge, huge thing for me. And I can barely like walk. So I'm certainly not doing any lifting or anything, which just really affects my mental state. So
Yeah.
I think that for me is more upsetting than anything else. Which, okay,
Well,
first world problems.
yeah, use ChatGPT as your therapist through this time. I went down this rabbit hole yesterday on TikTok where people were talking about what they use ChatGPT for. I would say therapy was like the number one answer. People were like, I've been going to therapy my entire life. And in one session with ChatGPT, I feel more seen and understood and cared for than all those years combined. I was like, damn. So just get on ChatGPT and tell it your problems, Tara.
I might as well because I told you I have been using your what do you call it?
Quantum Mentor.
The quantum mentor. And actually yesterday, I told you I was using it for other stuff, but then yesterday I went and I said, "Let me see if they can come up with like a mindset affirmation plan for healing." And it did. So I like
Yeah.
printed out this whole thing yesterday, and then this morning I spent like an hour just like focused on I am optimally healthy.
Well, it worked before when you
Yes, it
thought you had a
did.
brain aneurysm
Correct.
and then it was gone. So, I
Right.
mean, it can help with
I
this too.
I know I am very confident that my body will heal itself. I really am. I'm just also impatient, and everyone's like, "You need to go to the doctor because it's your back." And I'm just like, "No, I'm just going to let my body heal and do its thing." But my biggest, I guess, problem would be that once I start to feel a little better, I'm going to want to push it. And I need to not do that and just allow myself to actually heal.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
anyway, yay.
Lucky you. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. Well, let's talk about Trump because yesterday marked his 100th day in office. And I want to talk about some of the bullshit and then some of the awesome stuff. So, the Daily Wire actually did a really great breakdown of all the lies and the nonsense and the propaganda that's being perpetuated by the left and the MSM, of course. And I'm just going to name a few of the ones that they pointed out, saying he was going to cut Social Security and Medicaid and Medicare, which he hasn't done. And that has been pushed pretty hard by Jasmine Crockett and then Senator Chris Murphy. They said, I think it was Governor J.B. Pritzker from Chicago, who pushed the narrative that ICE raided an elementary school, which they didn't do. Multiple attempts to undermine RFK Jr. when he was being confirmed by saying a physician's advocacy group was opposing him. Then we had Senator Amy Klobuchar, who alleged that Trump was terminating cancer research and trying to starve children by getting rid of Head Start. And of course, the media narrative that Marco Rubio and Elon Musk were fighting. And obviously, this was an attempt to sabotage DOGE. And then all the drama to try to get Hegseth and Walls fired with the Signal chat accident. And the numerous lies trying to twist the narrative about DOGE findings. And then, of course, most recently, the way the liberals and the media have become completely obsessed with making illegal migrant criminals the poster children for what they see as wrongful immigration policies. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I want to throw something else in there real quick. Because yesterday, not only was it his first 100 days, but I just heard this morning. It was also like Fentanyl Awareness Day. And so it ties into Trump because the media is trying to, completely destroy him over deporting people. Yet we have fentanyl that's been killing more people than all of the wars combined since World War II of Americans. I heard that on Megyn Kelly. She was saying more young Americans have died from fentanyl than every war since World War II, which is insane. And I looked it up, and it said that the fentanyl overdose death rate for Black Americans was more than twice that of Hispanics and 27% higher than white people. And so I had to throw that out there too, because it's like here you have the MSM and the left that, are constantly talking about how Trump is this crazy racist. But like why aren't they talking about the fentanyl crisis and the fact that by him doing all of those things with the border, it's slowing down fentanyl pouring into this country and killing over 100,000 people every single year. So, sorry, I had to throw that in because that goes hand in hand with his first 100 days and what he's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And the left only cares about what's hurting Black people when it fits their narrative, and this
Right.
doesn't. So, I want to talk about some of the good things that Trump has accomplished in his first 100 days in office. So, he signed 141 executive orders implementing core agenda items that we, the American people, voted for. And he continually keeps trying to do the right thing, even though there are now more than 210 lawsuits that are challenging his administration and their agenda. And this, I think, is more executive orders in this 100 days than almost any president has signed in throughout their entire term of office, except I think during World War II. Inflation has declined by 0.5%, and it's at the lowest level that we've had since February of 21. His tariff strategy, yes, it is causing some turmoil right now, but like we keep saying, we need to give it some time because it has the ability to clean up our national debt and bring manufacturing back to the US. And we already have 1.75 trillion in new investments in America. Illegal border crossings are down 90%. 90 fucking percent. And taxpayers are being saved $1.6 billion a day thanks to DOGE. ICE released a report yesterday indicating that they arrested 66,463 illegal aliens in Trump's first 100 days. And surprise, 3 out of 4 of them were criminals. And this included over 2,288 gang members, 1,329 sex offenders, 498 people accused or convicted of murder, and then almost 20,000 people with convictions or charges for assault, DWI, and weapons offenses. So I think that's pretty fucking awesome and is just the beginning.
66,000 people. That's insane. I mean, especially considering it's been, only 100 days. I saw he did one of his rallies in Michigan for like his first 100 days, and he was saying on that day they only 3 people, 3 illegals got through the border. And he made a joke and he's like, I'm so pissed at Tom Homan for those 3 people. But it's crazy because you go from tens of thousands every day to 3. I mean, what a turnaround.
Yeah, 90% down on illegal crossings. And those ICE numbers, I mean, they've been very clear. They're targeting criminals. They're not going after, the elementary school children like the left wants us to believe. So I know if you look at a lot of the polls right now, they're showing that Trump's approval ratings have totally dropped. And obviously, this is the narrative in the MSM, but it's also being reported by more conservative news outlets. Even Fox News reported yesterday that aside from Trump's border and immigration policies, which show his approval rating at a record high, his approval has dropped when it comes to things like the economy, inflation, tariffs, foreign policy, and taxes. But again, I think we need to give him time for that. Like, to get our economy in shape, it's going to involve the tariffs and the foreign policy and the taxes. Like, all of it ties together. And inflation, like I said, is the lowest it's been in years. So I don't understand why people are not happy with that.
Oh, I know. The media. That's what's going on here. And it is crazy to me because I go grocery shopping all the damn time for my family, and I'm seeing so many prices go down. And that's the thing. If people see in their real life prices going down, but the media is telling them no, prices are going up because of tariffs, they will believe the media over what they're seeing in their actual life. Like, it's just absolutely crazy. But that's what the media is doing. They're going with this narrative, that he's deporting children, that the tariffs are just going to ruin everyone. And people believe it. But here's why I don't trust polling either, because you have that polling that shows, his ratings or whatever are dropping. But then you have all of these other polls, and I didn't combine all the information, but I've been seeing it left and right on TikTok. All these polls that are just showing extraordinary numbers of young conservatives that we haven't seen like ever. Like, it's the amount of this conservative base of young people is growing astronomically. And so I just don't know what to believe when it comes to polling. But
Yeah,
anyhow,
I want to ask you if you saw this because we didn't talk about it. And I came across this and you just reminded me of it. Like with this whole narrative with the left, did you see what they were saying about the Easter egg roll at the White House?
no.
Okay, so apparently, like the narrative was there's an egg shortage in America and, prices with eggs. And then Trump had these how many thousands of eggs at the Easter egg roll. And it was tone deaf for him to do that, even though, it's a traditional White House thing that has gone on forever. And so what actually happened was farmers donated all the eggs and like Trump and his administration didn't spend a dime on any of these Easter eggs. And so it was like just another example of the left trying to push this narrative that, Trump is doing something bad.
Right. Meanwhile, egg prices actually have come down. They're a lot lower now than they were under Biden. And the reason they were so high is because the Biden administration ordered millions of chickens to be killed because of the
Right.
bird flu. But they'll go crazy over that, over eggs. But then when Biden had to be led away by the Easter bunny when he was in office, like, they didn't want to talk about that. It's just, it's so
I
biased.
almost forgot about that.
Yeah, like how could you ever complain about anything after that
Oh
happened?
my
Like,
God.
at least he didn't have to be led away by the Easter bunny. My God. Okay. Completely switching gears. I have been dying to talk to you about this. And when I found out about it, I knew you were already in bed. So I'm like, shit, I'm just going to make notes and we'll talk about it on the podcast. But Spain and Portugal, and I think a few other countries, plunging into darkness. Okay, blackout, the grid went out, like millions of people without power. And of course, the media is saying it's weather. But I mean, really, like, are we going to believe that? I think what we need to be asking, and what a lot of people, at least on social media, are asking, is number one, was this some type of an attack? And number two, if it wasn't, does it have something to do with the Earth's magnetic field shifting, which is also a big concern that no one is talking about? And I want to play a clip that I found from ITV News where they give like the official story of what caused this grid outage.
Atmospheric phenomenon, which is thought to have caused the outage. Our science correspondent Martin Stew is here to explain. So go on then, what is it?
Well, Mary, it's all a bit of a mystery. We've only heard so far from Portugal's grid operator. They blame, as you said, this rare atmospheric phenomenon. They say it's extreme temperature variations which caused, I quote, anomalous oscillations in the very high voltage lines, also known as induced atmospheric vibrations.
Right, so that's clear then.
Which begs the question, what on earth does that mean? Well, look, in certain rapidly changing weather conditions, what you can see is the air around power lines gets warm and damp and windy, and you can physically sometimes see wires gallop, like you can see in Winnipeg here in America. It's not actually the physical movement that's the bigger problem. The main issue is if the ionized air around those cables interacts with the cable itself, it can change the electricity inside the wire. And as that frequency changes, it becomes different to the rest of the grid. And if that difference gets too great, the system has to shut down for safety reasons. What's unusual here is normally a bit like if the trip switch goes in your bathroom, the light stays on in the kitchen, a small section should have turned off. It seems to have wiped out the whole grid. There'll be lots of questions about that. And then what is really, really weird, in the words of an expert I spoke to, is if you look at Spain's weather forecast. Here is the weather today. Classic springtime temperatures, sunny, light winds. These are not the conditions that should be causing induced atmospheric vibrations. Now, we are yet to hear from the Spanish grid provider. Hopefully they can throw some light. Until then, we are as much in the dark, to be honest, as those people who are without power tonight.
So you have to get foreign news to hear people actually question the narrative, you know, because he's like, well, he sounds like he's not really buying it either. But all I could think about when I heard that is like, okay, of course, they're going to try and twist this into some type of climate change narrative. But does that really make sense? Like, just common sense, look at all of the extreme wildfires, heat waves, massive storms that have hit that same exact area before, and none of those caused this continent scale grid collapse. So like, why would, on a perfectly nice spring day, why would the weather cause the collapse of 60% of Spain's electricity? Like, that, to me, I'm just like, this is a cover story for something else. And I asked ChatGPT, like, what would be the most likely, and it was going over each scenario and the probability. And it was saying that didn't really make a whole lot of sense either, but that what most likely would happen is some type of a cyber attack on the power grid, like what happened in Ukraine in 2015. But that they'll never admit that because, number one, it shows your vulnerability as a country and like weakness. But number two, it can trigger like bigger escalations and you don't want people to panic. But I don't know, like, all I could think is this like a test run for something much bigger? If it is some type of a grid attack, that's what was going through my mind.
Okay, first of all, this was pretty crazy. Like, it wasn't just Spain and Portugal. Actually, before this even happened, like I think the day or two before, there were power outages across the UK. And nobody talked about them until after the fact because they were trying to say it's not related. But I think it is related. And France and Belgium also lost power. Prime Minister of Spain yesterday, like you said, 60% of the country's power went down within 5 fucking seconds. In 5 seconds. And they declared a state of emergency. The country descended into chaos like very fast, which is predictable, right? So stores and shopping malls were overrun with people trying to stockpile essentials. And there were pictures of like rows and rows of cars lining up to get gas. They shut down the airports, the trains, the metro services everywhere in both Spain and Portugal. People were stuck in the tunnels and on the railroad tracks, and they had to do all of these rescues. And then cities were asking the central government of Spain to take over public order. So the Ministry of the Interior deployed 30,000 police officers overnight to try to maintain security. And I guess the prime minister gave a press conference and he said, you know, there's no evidence of any kind of civil liberty protection problems, whatever that means. But that didn't stop people from panicking. And since there was no internet access, rumors were spreading very quickly about what the cause was. And you mentioned the official explanation being extreme temperature fluctuations, and reportedly this caused these anomalous oscillations in high voltage lines that just kind of had a domino effect through the grid. But let me point out something interesting here. This massive blackout happened literally days after Spain's entire power grid went completely renewable energy. So April 16th was the very first day that their power grid ran entirely on wind, solar, and hydropower for a whole day. And then, surprise, surprise, it came out last night that Spain's power grid operator admitted that solar power could have been the cause of the blackouts, but it's too early to know for sure. So a Spanish journalist was pointing out what we have been saying for 3 years on this fucking podcast when Biden was pushing for renewable energy, which is that the government deployed it without addressing maintenance and interconnection issues, like Biden was trying to do, pushing all the electric stuff when we didn't have the infrastructure for it. And so now power has been restored to both Spain and Portugal, and I think everything's fine in France and Belgium, but you take a look at the level of chaos and panic that is ensued for like a 1-day power outage. This is like just a very eye-opening reminder of what can happen when we become completely dependent on renewable energy.
Yeah, I knew you would find something good on this because, of course, the media here isn't going to talk about it because that would go against the left-wing narrative that everything needs to be solar powered. Even though we know it's not reliable. And they did say Europe's grid is interconnected. So if you have, one area that's on solar and that goes out, it could, have, like you said, that domino effect. It'll be interesting to see what happens with this. I have a feeling they will hide that news story and they'll say, no, it wasn't solar because, again, it goes against this narrative they've been pushing on everyone for years. There's another theory going around on TikTok, and I just don't know what to believe anymore, but I do want to bring it up because it ties into other things that we've talked about before, like the Maui wildfires, for example. But a lot of people are talking about these geomagnetic storms that are supposedly happening. So as soon as I heard that, I'm like, I'm going to the one and only person I trust on this topic, which is Glam Ham Radio. This woman is so freaking smart, and I trust her opinion. So let's just listen to what she has to say. She's got a couple theories.
Are out today in Spain and Portugal that affected 60 million people, disrupting transportation, communication, essential services, and you won't believe what this has in common with other similar incidents. I am not going to say what caused the outages. I will share theories of what could potentially cause such disruption. The official report, extreme temperature variations causing induced atmospheric vibration, disrupting high voltage lines, leading to failures of the grid. But when I went to look at the temperature fluctuations, Madrid seemed pretty tame and on par with other major cities in the world. Could this have been human error, mechanical failure? Obvious consideration. I mean, the US had one, but authorities say no evidence of a cyber attack. Could a big event in Europe have drained the power, like CERN starting up or military exercises? Well, there were no reports of any special thing happening at CERN. As for the military, some speculate this military tech and infrasound. Well, what are they? They are systems using focused energy like lasers and microwaves that could potentially disrupt the power grid. Infrasound refers to sound waves below what we can hear. Infrasound can cause physical vibrations in structures which might disrupt the stability of power lines or equipment. Has a big giant power outage happened before? Yes, and you won't believe what they have in common. In many instances of major power outages, there have been UFO sightings, including in Portugal and Spain. So can UAPs knock out power? Well, in 1968, physicist James E. McDonald testified before Congress that several instances of UFO sightings coincided with power outages. Again, I am not saying the power outage was anything unnatural. I am simply sharing historical historical data that may or may not be relevant to your pondering pleasure.
I almost forgot NASA released this footage of a orb-looking object passing the sun. It's a lunar transit, so they say. Could it be connected to the power?
Okay, so before you start laughing, okay,
The music was like
oh, I know.
so perfect.
She used to be in like theater and like a singer and stuff, and so she's very theatrical. But okay, I have so many places I want to go with this, but I think your explanation is probably the most likely. Okay, they use
I want
source.
to add to that real quick because I forgot to say this and I was reading this in the Daily Mail that like when you use what do you call it? Fossil fuels and like nuclear energy, there's like there's a tempo they were saying that is created by the huge turbines that make the energy move. And they have this very specific momentum and they called it synchronous inertia. And that it's very crucial because it's what makes all the turbines spin at the right speed and stay constant, but that they don't have these with renewable energy. So there's like nothing to keep it going. And so when a grid using renewable energy suffers a power failure, it's like catastrophic because there's nothing to help maintain it.
And they're never going to admit that. I mean,
No.
imagine being the people in power that allowed everything to switch over to this grid that's renewable energy, and then the whole country is like without power. You're not going to admit, like, oops, I made a mistake.
Right.
They're going to try and hide it. But anyhow, on that video, she had to kind of talk in code because her videos are getting banned and everything. But she's talking about direct energy weapons. When she was saying people are saying there was military activity, she's talking about direct energy weapons, which is absolutely what I think caused the Maui wildfires. And they can disrupt electrical grids and things like that. And with the UAPs, like we've said before, I don't think a lot of them are, aliens. I think it's these black ops military weapons that no one is aware of. Our own country isn't aware of half the shit we have. And so, that's what like Elon Musk and Stephen Greer have said as well. Like a lot of these things that are being classified as UAPs are the government, like black ops things. But the other thing she brought up too about the lunar transit, I looked it up and NASA did post this like lunar transit that sure did look very strange. It didn't look like the moon just like moving in front of the sun. It looked like something else. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But when I heard the direct energy weapon thing, I thought, okay, with everything going on in the world right now and how pissed China is and Russia and like everything else, could it have been a direct energy weapon that they were using or testing out or whatever? I mean, it's in the realm of possibility, although I am going with your theory as the number one theory.
Well, speaking of China, I have a crazy story for you because allegedly Chinese scientists have now created a new high power microwave gun. And it's like the size of a Gatling gun, right? So it's something not that big. And it can fire over 10,000 times without failing. And this is being reported by the Northwest Institute of Nuclear Technology. And they're claiming that this weapon is capable of producing 10 to 30 pulses per second, and that each pulse produces hundreds of megawatts per shot, and that its microwave beams can disable drones and missiles and aircraft and even low orbit satellites by rendering their electronics incapable. And this capability is all part of a new technology. It's like a self-contained vacuum system where ceramic and metal are welded and bonded together in a way that it doesn't require any other materials and like no rubber seals or anything. So it makes the weapon more damage resistant and way less maintenance than traditional high fire weapons and microwave weapons. So if it's capable of causing damage to low orbit satellites, That could certainly affect our electrical grid. And then I also saw this story in the Sustainability Times yesterday, since you mentioned NASA. It was talking about how NASA confirmed that a dam in China is subtly altering the Earth's rotation. And it's called the Three Gorges Dam, and it's the largest hydroelectric dam in the world. And even at that size, it only powers 3% of China's energy needs. But maybe this is also fucking with the Earth's climate and stability and everything else.
See, this is what pisses me off. It's like we can't drive gas-powered vehicles, but then shit like that's happening, and people are flying in private jets. It's like that's why I don't believe anything they say. But that's crazy. If that could take out a satellite, yeah, like that could disrupt a grid, especially a grid that's interconnected. I mean, hell yeah, like that could. So who knows? But regardless of whatever caused this, I hope it's enough to scare our government here in the US to finally update our grid because it was built more than 50 years ago. It's long overdue for upgrades. The American Society of Civil Engineers graded the US energy infrastructure at a C minus in the latest report card. Like, that is ridiculous with today's technology. And so I looked it up, and our grid here is divided into three main sections. So you have the Eastern interconnection, the Western interconnection, and then Texas ERCOT, which I guess failed back in 2021 when they had the freezing temperatures.
Yeah.
And even though these are divided, just like Europe, they're all internally interconnected. So if you have a massive failure in one area, it can cascade across states like dominoes, just like what happened in Europe. So this should be a huge wake-up call for anyone who's been against this, against updating the grid. And it's not like a grid attack is far-fetched either. You have the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI that have repeatedly said that Russia, China, Iran, and North Korea all have the capabilities to attack U.S. infrastructure digitally. In 2024, it was revealed that malware linked to Chinese groups had been embedded in water treatment plants, power grids, pipelines, and they're just waiting to be turned on. All they have to do is be activated, and we're screwed. Then, of course, there was the Chinese weather balloon, and not to mention, like, all the drones in the sky. And so it's like all of these things have the ability to carry the devices that would be needed to attack a grid. And on top of all of that, we have had historical solar storms over the past year. They say that there's all these studies showing a solar superstorm or an electromagnetic pulse event could knock out the U.S. grid for months, which would cause like everything to collapse. It would cause mass casualties, all kinds of stuff. This actually happened before. It was called the Carrington event, happened in 1859. But at that time, technology was so limited, it mainly just damaged like telegraph stations. But nowadays, could you imagine, like every single aspect of life would be completely disrupted? Just like they were saying in Europe, the hospitals couldn't function, emergency call centers, like everything went dark. And so you just get people that panic and everything goes into full-fledged chaos. So whether it's a grid attack or a solar storm or renewable energy, it doesn't matter. Like this should be a sign that we need to update our grid and we need to do it like now.
Society would implode if there was something that lasted for more than a couple days. I mean, the chaos that occurs with a 1-day power outage, weeks or months, like there's just no way.
There's no way. Yeah. And they've done studies on it. It's terrifying. Society would collapse.
Yeah.
And luckily, Trump understands this. Like, he has been talking about this a lot for years. And he actually issued numerous executive orders, including the one on securing the United States bulk power system. This was back in 2020, and it's been updated now in 2025. And it's banning the use of foreign-made components, especially Chinese-made components in U.S. electrical infrastructure. And it aims to purge potentially compromised hardware that's already been installed across the grid. Then there's the Energy Independence and Infrastructure Security Act of 2025. So this is a draft proposal. So it's still in progress. But it would funnel billions of dollars into modernizing the grid, creating redundancies, building microgrids, which are like smaller self-sustaining regional power grids. It would harden the system against cyber attacks and EMPs. And then earlier this month, he also announced a National Energy Resilience Task Force. They're designed to coordinate federal, state, and private sector defenses of critical infrastructure. And so part of this is doing these simulated like blackout drills to basically stress test the national grid. So he's on it, and hopefully what just happened in Europe will ensure that our shit show Congress cooperates and they don't try and stop yet another agenda item.
Maybe when they can't use their cell phones because we have no power, they'll be forced to actually do their job.
Right?
So, yeah.
I'd like
So
to see a liberal try to survive a blackout, okay? That would be funny.
Oh, we shouldn't hope for those things though, because it would affect all of us.
Cancel what I just said. Cancel it. Delete it.
All right, we got to talk about Canada because the Liberal Party won the election in Canada yesterday. And so sadly, it looks like the elite former central banker Mark Carney is going to be staying in power as the prime minister. And we were talking a few weeks ago about how the Conservative Party had a 20-point lead, and it looked like they were probably going to win the election. But news outlets are reporting that it was Trump's tariff plan and all his talk about making Canada the 51st state that basically sparked a surge of nationalism in Canada that turned the tides. And Carney was very good at using this as his strategy to create a winning narrative that Trump is trying to break Canada. And so I think this is what helped push people to vote liberal.
It's so funny because they got rid of Trudeau, right? Like he failed and they knew it. And they replace him with Carney, who's like Trudeau on steroids. I mean, this guy's way worse in my opinion. But like I could see what happened because just look at what happened here in the US. Like every time the left attacked Trump during the campaign, it made him more popular. And so with Trump like kind of poking fun at Canada, I'm sure it did spark their patriotism where they're like, screw you. And they all, you know, kind of shifted the view. So hopefully he's learned a lesson in that and like won't take that same approach moving forward. But also the media definitely had a role in this. I don't know if you remember a few weeks ago, I had ended up on like the Canadian side of TikTok. And I was like, what the hell kind of propaganda are they being fed? Because all of like left and right, I was seeing these videos where Canadians were saying like, please Trump, don't bomb us. Please don't like start a war with us. Like they really thought that the US was going to like attack them, like with our military. And then people were going as far as to cancel their trips. There were people that were like, every year, my entire life, we would go travel, you know, into the US and we can't do that now. It's not safe and they're not going to let us return. I mean, they really were like fearful. And so I'm sure whatever's going on with Canadian media, they've pushed a narrative just like they do here, and people believed it. So, I mean, how else do you go from this 20-point lead of conservatives to Carney winning?
Right. And that wasn't just on social media because I saw plenty of articles in the MSM telling people don't travel to the United States from Canada because they were going to have problems. And this is such a perfect example of how people fall for the propaganda. And since Canada's media is censored, all they're seeing is negative things about Trump. But I do wonder, like, how this is going to impact Canada's alliance like with the EU, because this is only going to perpetuate that globalist narrative that the EU is still holding on to. And now they've got a clear globalist, Carney, who's staying in power. And I think it's just going to be that much harder, especially with this whole tariff game.
Absolutely. Carney is more EU than Canada, you know, and he's got ties to the World Economic Forum. This is a bad guy. I mean, if we thought Trudeau was bad, this guy it's not going to be anything positive. Like, he's not going to want to work with Trump. We'll put it that
Right.
way.
Yeah. And especially that he's won on that narrative, he's just going to stick with that. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what happens there. As usual, I'm going to turn the topic to California, which we talk a lot about. And I'm clearly slightly obsessed with really just trying to expose how Newsom continues to destroy my home state with liberal politics. And we know that one of the key problems there is the homeless crisis. So, Stephanie, listen to this. First of all, it was initially reported by the New York Sun that close to 200,000 homeless people live in California, which no surprise there. But what I didn't realize is that's 1/4 of all the homeless people in the entire country. So obviously big problem. And even though Newsom likes to pretend he supports clearing homeless encampments, we know that was only for propaganda because he has let the problem go on for so long that it's basically untenable now. And it's gotten so bad that the Democratic mayor of San Jose is actually calling for arresting homeless people if they refuse to go to a shelter 3 times. But if you still don't think that's enough to show you how bad the homeless problem and the overall housing crisis is in California, there is literally a debate going on right now in the California legislature about a bill that would mandate community colleges and state universities to basically turn their parking lots into homeless encampments. So this bill would require each facility to provide 50 parking spaces with on-campus bathroom access and shower facilities and a safety plan so that homeless students can sleep in their cars. And according to a survey conducted by the Community College League of California, 3 in 5 community college students are, quote, housing insecure, which basically means they're unable to find affordable housing. So basically, they want to turn these campus parking lots into homeless encampments.
Okay, so the solution isn't to make more affordable housing in California. It's to turn their college campuses into tent cities,
Yeah.
which is the dumbest idea I've ever heard. Because, I mean, how many billions of dollars, over $20 billion, well, most of that has probably been money laundered. But they threw money at this problem for years, and it just keeps growing and growing and growing because when you tell people, hey, you can live on the street and we're not going to arrest you or make you move, turns out that enables people to do that. And doing this in a college parking lot, I'm just thinking back to when I was in college. Like, they're going to look at this as like that whole summer of love thing. Like, oh,
Yes.
yeah, like let's all camp out. And, you know, there's going to be drugs rampant. Horrible idea. It doesn't work. They've done studies to show even if you like set up housing, it still doesn't work. Like, that's not fixing the problem. And I cannot believe at this point they still haven't learned their lesson and they keep doing this stupid shit. It's really sad.
Yeah, and technically, you don't even need to be an actual student because all you have to do is sign up for classes because low income people qualify for like free tuition in a lot of circumstances. So if they just apply for classes and then it looks like they have a schedule of classes and then they can just live in the parking lot, they don't actually have to go to school. I mean,
Yeah, and you don't even, it's not even just free tuition because I used to live in a college town and we saw this all the time. It was like a rural community, but people would come from Chicago, low income people, and they would do that. They would sign up for classes because they would get these grants where not only would they get their tuition paid for, but they would get money to pay for like rent and books and stuff. Well, of course, they would not use it for that and not show up to classes. And it became a really big problem very fast. So this is just asking for more homeless people,
yeah,
you know, college
they're going to
students.
move them from the sidewalks to campuses now so that people who actually are going to college are going to have to deal with this in the parking lot when they go to school.
You go in the bathroom and they might be standing there naked trying to cleanse themselves because they're
Right.
allowed to use the public facilities. And I mean, let's be real, a lot of the homeless people are fentanyl users or just drug users in general or, you know, have mental illness. And that is scary. Like walking in and having a whole, basically a city of these people it's a bad idea. And it's just going to, I think, turn a lot of people away from these community colleges that want to actually go and get a degree and better their lives.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I got to talk about another shit show bill that's being introduced in California, and this one blows my mind too. They want to decriminalize welfare fraud under $25,000 if the benefits were authorized as an administrative error. So this is coming from the state where the system is so fucked that welfare fraud is costing taxpayers literally billions of dollars. But let's go ahead and waive any like quote unquote mistakes as long as they're under $25,000, because that's not going to increase like the fraud and the money laundering schemes that are already going on there.
If you really care about helping people with welfare, then you would really hate people that use it in the wrong way and that are taking advantage. What do you want to bet? They're decriminalizing it because of DOGE and because they know like shit's going to come to the surface and there's going to be a lot of important people that are guilty of defrauding the welfare system, maybe even Newsom himself. So they're going to decriminalize it so that way they don't go to jail when it all comes out. That's what I think.
I did not even think of that, but you're probably right.
You know, with Newsom, I just always assume it's like money laundering.
Right. Yeah.
Because it probably is, which is really sad. Oh my gosh. Yeah, California, man. It went from being like the most desired place to live, and now it's just turned into a shit show. It's really sad.
Yeah.
Okay, I want to talk about something going on in my state, which is Florida. They just busted one of the biggest like international child sex trafficking rings that has ties to Florida. And I've heard that ever since we moved here, that this is like a hub for child trafficking, which freaks me out. I'm going to play a clip from the press conference, but I'm going to warn you, some of the stuff he says is very disturbing. So feel free, skip ahead a couple of minutes if you don't want to hear it. I don't blame you. But here's what they found.
But we do have a big announcement this morning that we are busting an international child pornography ring. We will be bringing charges against 8 individuals this morning, 7 of whom are Florida residents. As a dad of 3 little ones, it's tough to talk about some of this stuff, but what these guys were doing was truly heinous. There's not a word in the English dictionary that can describe the gross content that was on the videos. Our investigators have been able to get their hands on over 1 million videos showing sexual abuse on minors. Many of these individuals were babies that are being sold around the world. The 2023 National Center for Missing and Exploited Children reports over 36 million instances of suspected child sexual exploitation and over 100 million files related to child sex abuse material. And that's only what's getting reported. This continues to be a problem in our country, in our state. Protecting our kids is not an easy task to begin with. And today, with the access to the internet and social media, it allows these sick predators to more easily get access to our kids. And as I've said, my first 5-6 weeks on the job here, that's going to be a major priority for my office. The individuals that are being busted today that purchase this harmful content, many of them found it through TikTok. It was available online. They found access to a portal where they could purchase this dangerous material. TikTok has shown they can very quickly get stuff off their website. If there's unlicensed music or something going around, they've proven with a flip of a switch they can get it off. And it's taken too long for them to get some of this pornographic material and avenues to purchase harder, more gross content. We've got to get them to be more accountable. So we will be working on that. We are going to hold social media companies accountable that want to put our families and our kids in jeopardy. Uplifting.
Okay, so first of all, I just think about all of the migrant missing children. We've talked about that for years.
Yep.
And, everyone wants to ignore it in the media. You never hear about it, but that's the reality of what's happening to these poor kids. And I also wanted to play that clip because I thought he made a great point that we've brought up many times as well, which is that these social media companies will censor and ban conservative accounts instantly. Like if I talk about Hillary Clinton and I don't censor her name, if I talk about chemtrails, banned immediately. Yet child pornography is rampant on these platforms. So like they have the ability to stop it. They're actively choosing not to. And I think what we've seen from whistleblowers is that, especially with Facebook, not only do they not stop it, I mean, they push it. Like the algorithm will push it to child predators. And you have to ask, like, why? Why have we not seen any of the Epstein clients? Why will no one talk about the migrant children? Why are all these big social media companies allowing this? Because they're all fucking in on it. And I want to say, like, when Elon Musk took over X, they got rid of child pornography, like, what would it take? Like, not even 2 weeks, and it drastically was reduced. So it's possible. They can absolutely do it. This is very intentional. And I think that, I hope what he's saying is they're going to start to, hold these companies liable for this shit.
Okay, I have proof that my phone is listening when we're talking, because as you were playing that clip and talking about that, I get a news alert on my phone, and it's an article that came out 3 hours ago from the New York Sun. And I got to bring it back to California because the article is about how California Democrats just rejected a proposal to make trafficking 16 and 17-year-olds a felony. So I guess they just gutted this bill where it used to be, I'll just read directly from the article. It says, Democratic lawmakers in California are gutting a bill that would make it a felony to purchase 16 and 17-year-old children for sex. The Assembly Public Safety Committee advanced AB 379, but stripped the provision, reducing the crime to a misdemeanor. So what you said, right? So what you said just now about, like, maybe they're all fucking in on it. Like, who the fuck is going to say, oh, if they're 16 or 17, like, it's not a felony. Let's just make that a misdemeanor. That's insane.
They're a part of this trafficking ring, and they're like, oh shit, we better quickly. How evil do you have to be to not think that should be a felony? I mean, that is so blatant. I can't believe someone would tie their name to that and vote no.
I know. And it just literally just came out. So, like, there's not a whole lot in the article, except that the Democratic chairman of the Assembly Public Safety Committee, Nick Schultz, ordered the felony charges dropped from the bill in order to allow a hearing on it before proceeding. Why would you need a fucking hearing on that?
Yeah, what's there to hear about it? It's either wrong or not wrong. Like, obviously it's wrong. Your phone is totally, like, it's listening. It's like, oh yeah, yep, and...
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Oh, wow.
All right, so let's get away from the very disturbing topic of child trafficking. And I've got another DOGE update. I have a couple, actually. So first, more DEI spending exposed. And this comes from the Department of Agriculture to the tune of $2.5 billion in 420 wasteful grants. This was announced yesterday that here are a couple of the programs that have been terminated. And I'm reading directly what the grants were, okay? It's $361,000 for gender non-conforming, non-binary, two-spirit, BIPOC farmers in New York, $150,000 for gender-lensed curricula designed to be transdisciplinary in the food, agriculture, natural resources, and human sciences. And then $10,000 for climate resilience, sustainable agriculture in Ghana, which is, like, not that bad compared to the others.
What the hell is two-spirit?
I don't know.
And why is it getting $361,000? Oh my God.
And this is in New York. Normally all these grants seem to be for things like in other countries, but this is in New York. And I don't know what two-spirit is.
I didn't know there was farming in New York.
I guess in
farmers.
rural New York. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, true. Duh.
And something even more concerning, there is a joint effort by DOGE and the US Treasury Department that just revealed another 334 million in improper payment requests that were flagged because of missing, invalid, or unauthorized budget codes. This is separate from the 4.7 trillion in untraceable payments that were discovered a couple months ago when DOGE first started assessing the Treasury Department. And I just, like, how much more proof do we need? Every week, there's more evidence that our government has been a complete financial shit show. And when I think about how I have been like raped in my paychecks with taxes, especially in California at both the state and the federal level, and where is all this money going? To fucking fraud, fraud and nonsense.
Fraud by the elites, which is why
Yeah.
it's so funny that people on the left hate Doge. And it's like you're constantly saying the phrase, eat the rich. Well, here, like, you're stopping these payments that are clearly money laundering for, wealthy politicians and whatnot. And you're unhappy about that. It blows my mind. You can't explain it.
Yeah.
Man, we just went all over the place today. That's wild. All right. Well, we're only halfway through the week, and that's what's going on. So we'll see what Friday brings us. But thanks everyone for tuning in, and we'll see you back here soon.